This will be a quick video on how I fixed my power seat in my 2005 Chevy Colorado. As it turned out, it was the tilt motor in the back upright version of the seat. Right here, you're seeing it in the video. The one thing to keep in mind is when you put that square shaft back in the motor, you definitely want to do it from the outside. Here is the clip, or one of the power wires that goes to the vertical or the back seat. And there's actually two plug-ins, or I should say three plug-ins, that go from the back to the front. This is a power pack, a 12-volt power pack that I used to test to see whether it was in the motor or the switch. My black and white wire here is a 12-volt system. If I went with the black and the red wire, it'd be a 6-volt system. But this was a 12-volt system, so I had to set it up so that I could test the motor. And what I did is I took those two leads that are now taped off on that power pack, and I put them into the plug-in for the tilt motor, and it energized the motor. So I know it wasn't a bad motor at that point. So it's somewhere between the switch and the motor. Here are some of the tools that I used. Actually, you don't use a 12 millimeter. This is what I thought I used, but I used a 13 millimeter. I'll show you later. Along with the 13, I use a 10 millimeter. 10 millimeter. I used a small 90-degree angle air ratchet also, and then this is the 18 millimeter. This is used on the four main bolts that hold the seat down in the cab. And there's an 8 millimeter bolt too. I mean socket that's used for the bolts. Here's the seat itself. Now at first I thought it was in one of these three motors, and I took those apart and be very careful because it's very hard to put them back together because they actually pull apart the magnets and the armature and everything in the motors. Here's one of the two power cords that actually go to the seat from the chassis of the truck itself. All of the plugs are basically idiot-proof, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up or labeling them. Here I'm pointing out the four places where the 18 millimeter bolts hold the seat down. And you'll definitely want to do this first. Take those four bolts out, or otherwise there's not enough room to work underneath the seat with it in place. But it's very easy to tilt it and then unplug anything that you need to at that point. There's a little bit larger air ratchet wrench that I used to remove the 18 millimeters. And again, here I'm showing 13 because that's what I used. And that actually holds the bracket underneath the seats that holds the two or three plugs in place. And there you can see I'm pointing out there underneath there's a fuse. Make sure that that fuse is plugged in because it's not really held in that well, and if that's unplugged, nothing will work on your seat. Which actually I used later. I took that out so nobody can readjust the seat because it's not completely fixed yet. Here's some more of the plug-ins underneath the seat, just giving you a good idea of what it looks like underneath the seat. And here I'll plug. Be very careful you don't get these plugs stuck, because that plug was stuck underneath the foam and I couldn't find it. I was left with one plug in. I couldn't figure out where does this get plugged into, and that's where it was. So hopefully this will give you an idea of how to fix